Welcome back once more to an episode on the More People Podcast. Andrew Fitzmaurice, joined once again by Matthew Downs. Matthew, great to have you back.
Thank you very much.
And the reason we've got part two, as with lots of our guests who are subject matter experts, because we wanted to talk about cybersecurity. We've had a climate in 2025 with some headline key instances with people like M&S and Jaguar Land Rover falling foul of these things. But since we've got you here today, perhaps you can give us some more intel, explain a bit more about why this happens, how to avoid it, and what best practice perhaps looks like.
Yeah, it's pretty bad at the moment, isn't it? It doesn't seem like a day or a week goes by without some horrible headline that some companies fallen foul. And you think these are some big names that you'd think would have, cybersecurity teams and be right all over it. Apparently, there's a global cybersecurity attack every 39 seconds.
Brilliant.
In the UK, that translates into something like 65,000 attempts to get into systems each day, with 4,500 of those, so some small sub-proportion, being successful in some shape or form. I'll come into what success means when we talk about sort of cyber attacks. But 43% of companies reported some sort of breach in 2024. That could be as minor as a sort of GDPR type issue, but nonetheless, good proportion of businesses having challenges with cybersecurity. And it's estimated that the average incident, and I appreciate this scales from massive corporations through to sort of small businesses, is $4 million. And that's a mixture of direct costs in terms of sort of IT recovery, lost business, but also reputational damage. And 90% plus of those cyber incidents are traced back to people as the underlying cause. I also read recently a Sophos, which is an IT security company, 2025 report that half of companies pay ransomwares, which is quite shocking. But apparently the main drivers for that is they just can't afford the downtime. And you can see that with Marks and Spencer's, Jaguar Land Rover, also quoting something like $200 million as the cost for the downtime that they've incurred so far.
So the 4 million average incident didn't include ransoms?
No, it did, yes, but I think spread across all companies. But it gives you a flavour, doesn't it, for the average incident to be costing $4 million. Just gives you an idea of how impactful it can be, even for relatively small businesses. Companies not able to tolerate downtime, not having backup, so literally having no way out of a ransomware type situation. Or also worries about reputational damage, just that they don't want data being leaked if it's particularly sensitive, the information that they store. From that report, it also said that a quarter of those paying never got their data back. So it goes to show that going down that route isn't all no guarantees, and also much more likely of incurring repeat attacks. So obviously once you've stumped up some money, they know that you're a willing victim, so to speak. You get targeted again. And a lot of these attacks coming from a mix of well-organized gangs, groups of kids with not enough to do, but also nation states or criminal entities acting within nation states that are sort of beyond legal reproach. They're in former Soviet Union countries, they're in North Korea or Iran. I know those are sort of cliche claims, but it does seem to be the case. So it's not easy for companies in the West and law enforcement agencies just to make it stop, because some of the attacks are kind of beyond their reach.
And no one's safe, right? So if you're a big money company, New York Stock Exchange, regulated by the SEC, you think that'd be an obvious target because there's oodles of money, or a JLR or an M&S, there's lots of money there. But I'm guessing that little old MorePeople is just as much at risk to being targeted as a big FTSE 100 corporate.
Yes, in my career, I've actually had some experience with cyber incidents. I do stress not at businesses that I was directly responsible for the IT, but near businesses, so within a group environment, another company within the group having an issue. But it gave me an opportunity to kind of get in and see how a cyber attack like that might play out, and really inform some lessons learned. And it kind of goes to answer your question. It's not black and white, and that's no surprise, I suppose, when I say it slowly. But how did we get here? What makes IT systems vulnerable, and why can't you just make them not vulnerable? That's a straightforward question that somebody could ask reasonably. And why isn't there a straightforward answer? I think what you have to do is you have to take a step back in technology and think about the history of sort of how did we get here with the technologies that we've got today. I always think in IT, and speak personally from working in it, still a bit Wild West. You think in a lot of industries, whether you're a finance person, you've got your qualifications, you're a chartered accountant, you're working HR, hiring and firing, CIPD qualifications. In IT, it's a lot more opaque, and it's just representative of how fast it's developed. And then, if you go back 30, 40, 50 years, you're talking about the origins of technologies we're still using today. So the internet was originally conceived to create a kind of nuclear-proof communication. If you've got a Cold War going on and a bomb gets dropped and you've got a cable running between two cities, you lose communication. So they came up with this system where you basically break a message into little packets and you send it off with no instruction how to get to the destination, but just what the destination is. And each point on this network passes on the next message until it gets to its final destination where it gets all reassembled. But it means that you can chop the network up and messages can still flow sort of between all points. And a lot of the mechanisms that are used to move data around, you think of email with a header, all very antiquated, all have their origins in that sort of old technology. So even modern systems, you've got your nice iPad there, are relying on this sort of stack of technology, much of which is old, antiquated, had no thoughts of the internet or cyber attacks when it was conceived, that we now rely on various elements. And very difficult to affect change because it's a big global system and set of standards that evolve over time rather than, can be reinvented. So if you look at, there's a couple of things, MITRE ATT&CK framework, which is actually a legitimate organization that sort of categorizes different types of cyber threats. It's effectively a massive toolkit for how do you break into an environment. How do you do it in a secret, stealthy way? How do you avoid getting detected? How do you spread out and monitor and reconnaissance? How do you get data out of that environment without being detected? How do you sabotage that environment without getting detected? So that capability has become almost consumerized. If you can go online, there's legitimate companies selling sort of attack packages in the guise of cybersecurity training or testing, which can effectively, get you into an environment. I've worked in a couple of businesses or around a couple of businesses that have had issues. And you go through a very interesting journey. One of them had cyber essentials and thought that they were covering their bases. They had an outside IT party. But the journey was, Friday evening, bank holiday weekend, can't get into IT systems. Oh dear, on the phone to IT. But then what evolves is, no, it's really caused mayhem. Most of the systems are knocked out. And people just don't realize kind of how complicated IT's got. You've got your computer on your desk, you've got your servers, you've got your systems and whatever. But you've now got all this stuff. You've got production lines that are all connected to your network, measuring the weights of things, all feeding back as people have tried to automate as much as they possibly can. So when you get that knocked out, all of a sudden you haven't got a view on, what you've got, what your orders are, where your stock is, how do you fulfill things? So you go on this like phased journey of kind of denial and then switching to a manual process. eventually getting your systems back. But then you have another horrible task, which is like the cold start, which is, I think, what you're seeing with, M&S with their online delivery, Jaguar Land Rover with production, which is either you have to stop completely and wait until you get your systems back, or if you do anything in the meantime, when the systems do come back, they're all from a month ago.
Yeah.
You just haven't been making the changes that you've been doing in the real world in the systems. So effectively, you have to kind of go back to zero. So going on that journey, you learn a lot about, what does all that mean and kind of what can you do about it?
Well, actually, I had one this morning. So in the last 2 hours, I'm pretty sure I've had an attempt. Because wasn't the M&S one originated the breach from a mobile device? Am I right in saying that?
I think quite often it is like the two-factor authentication. They bombard you with sort of two-factor requests.
I've had this one literally this 10:04 this morning, so a couple of hours ago, talking about Royal Mail.
Yes.
And a parcel that's temporarily held. If you're more naive or curious or absent-minded and you just go boop, and we're very, very aware of it at as a business, I think we're aware of it.
Yeah.
Certainly as directors, we're really aware of it, but it wouldn't take too much to absent-mindedly click this URL and follow the steps, would it?
And although there are systems in place to try and protect you from that, so, when you click that link, what allows you out onto the internet? Is there anything to stop it? Is there anything to vet that link is legitimate? People and training is a kind of key element, but not just training, is testing as well. What's helpful is if you can get a message like that sent to your employee base, you think, well, everyone's like-minded, they're all going to act in the same way.
Yeah, we have been talking about that with our IT people. That's a really good point. Like you say, training and testing. The testing's a really good secondary point to the training. So we're talking training and testing. To wrap up, can you give us a third top tip?
Yes. So I mentioned the vulnerability scanning. There's a number of different solutions out on the market that actually help with that exercise. And I think when we've done it for the first time in businesses I worked on, it's quite shocking. You get this enormous list of vulnerabilities. We thought we were doing quite a good job. We were running our monthly patching. We were updating devices. We were running training. We tick, tick, tick. We thought we were doing what we needed to. But what we realized when we did that exercise is, no, there's just, holes everywhere. And actually, this isn't an exercise in hole elimination. It's about hole reduction. Vulnerabilities are kind of ranked by criticality. So the most critical issue you have and the most frequent you have, you want to tackle first. Strong advice to businesses. There's obviously all the, we mentioned training, backing up, they're obvious things. Is that vulnerability scanning and reporting it to senior management, like a health and safety KPI. How many vulnerabilities have we got? You fix all your critical ones. Tomorrow there might be another new critical one. I mean, it's that kind of environment. You need to be thinking about it like health and safety. Backups are only as good as the last time you tested restoring them. People are very good at backing up data. They're not so good at backing up systems. So if the system got knocked out, how would you recover it? And how quickly could you recover it? And have you practiced recovering it? So those were the sort of lessons that we learned. Encrypting data, you've got a lot of data sat in spreadsheets. You've got a lot of information. If somebody got a copy of that, is there anything that you wouldn't want them to see or share? Things that you've sent in email and so on and so forth. So thinking about sensitive data and encrypting it, because it's all very well they've got the file, but if they can't look at the contents, it's sort of useless. So I think there's a kind of catalogue of best practice. I'm sure if you wanted more on any of those, you could certainly find it out through some searching. AI, in the previous podcast we did where we talked a bit about AI, there is an interesting link going on. The hackers are starting to use AI to help do things like generate the message that you showed me this morning. They used to be easy to spot, didn't they? Getting harder and harder. And I think if you're not a natural native English speaker, it's quite hard to write a legitimate sounding message. AI can do it really easily. So it's definitely an evolving space.
Well, brilliant. That's been really, really interesting. I feel like I've got loads of work to do now off the back of this podcast, which, as depressing as that might sound, is obviously hugely useful. And to have a subject matter expert highlight some of these things has been really, really useful. So I appreciate you going through that, Matt.
No problem. My pleasure.